could sing. And I can hear you breathing. Water mountains rise and fall. Rise and fall with dignity. One more day without you. It's just too much for me. Through the eyes of love, I see your face. And in the words of love, I call your name. Through the eyes of love, I see your face. And in these dreams, I feel no pain. Dreams in America. Dreams in America. So we curl into a little ball and roll. To where we lie in ecstasy. Breezes soothe our souls. Would you listen to lovers' fantasy? Through the eyes of love, I see your face. And in the words of love, I call your name. Through the eyes of love, I see your face. And in these dreams, I feel no pain. Dreams in America. Dreams in America. We seem to go our separate ways. Our bodies tuned to different rhymes. The only thought that is a saving grace, reunion, passage of time.
Mother's parents, Frederick and Winifreda Meir, lived in the English Midlands. Frederick Meir, born in 1892, came from a farming family of 6 boys and 1 girl. He worked the land during his life, reared pigs, and was a renowned horsebreaker and trainer. He passed away in 1974 at the age of 82. Winifreda Meir's maiden name was Probyn, and her mother was Eliza Rhodes, a direct descendant of Sir Cecil Rhodes, the colonizer of what was Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. Winifreda Meir was a traditional homemaker, and in her later years, a devotee of the Reverend Billy Graham. She passed away in 1981 at the age of 80 after suffering a stroke. Mother was born on December 23, 1927. Her only sibling is her sister Kathleen, 3 years her elder. Auntie Kath married Dennis Cannon in 1945, and they now live in Shifnal, Shropshire, England. Dad's parents, Frederick and Annie former Penlington Bates, had a family of 4 boys and 2 girls in London, England. Frederick Bates, born in 1890, was a gold blocker engaged in book manufacturing and passed away at the age of 80 in 1970. Annie Bates, born in 1890, was a homemaker and passed away at the age of 82 in 1972. Dad was born Stanley Albert Bates on May 28, 1923. His siblings, still residing in England, were photographed at the Bates family reunion in 1989, and they show all except Stanley. From left to right, Frederick William, born 1919, Vera Rose, born 1928, Ronald Walter, born 1916, Joan Violet, born 1926, and Alfred Leonard, born 1921.
These are some of my favorite pictures from our old family albums and from old boxes of pictures. At the top on the left is a picture of Jennifer and Paul taken when they were little in England. Jennifer dressed up to go to a party and Paul in his little knitted pullover and bow tie. Next to him on the right is one of my favorite pictures of Stan when he was in the Merchant Navy. And down on the right corner bottom is a cute picture of Fenella when she was little, running down the garden path with dirty little pants on. And then a picture of Heather, looking cute and sassy as she was then and is today. This is a family picture taken, I think, in 1968. And it was quite a job to get all the family together, but I think it's representative of us at that age. Here is a picture of my sister Kathleen and her husband Dennis. This is quite a recent one. I believe this was taken on Dennis's 70th birthday. And both look very well and happy. Here is a nice picture I had this Christmas of our three grandchildren, Jake, Shane, and Dylan. And this is my little foster child from Nepal. And her name is Sunu Maya. She's about 8 years old.
Okay, this is a really old photograph. I don't know quite when, but it's on my father's side, and this is my father's father here in the middle, and my father's mother here. Now his name was William Henry John, and her name was Eliza. No, pardon me, Emily. William Henry John and Emily. He was born in 1865 and died in 1911. And she was born in 1862 and died in 1945. And then this is the rest of the family. Now these people are all dead now because it's quite an old picture. This is my father on the right, my dad on the right, and his sister Alice. They're a large family. Sister Alice and M, and then the other brother William. And here we go down to Sue, and that's two grandparents. And then here's Aunt Rose, and then come down to the younger members, Aunt Lot. We used to call her Lot, but I'm sure it was Charlotte. Anyway. And then here is Ernest, Florence, and Nin. Now I could never quite understand what Nin was short for, but anyway, we used to call her Aunt Nin. But let's say that. Okay, this is me when I think I was about 3, and my mother was really jealous in keeping her pictures, and she wouldn't part with this to me after we got married. But somebody, I'm not quite sure who, sneaked it out of her box and gave it to me. I think it was Auntie Vera. But anyway, that's how we came to get it. This one is when we were quite small, of course, and here's me here, and Alf, my brother Alf, and then Joan and Vera, and this is a cousin, Jean. Notice the old deck chairs that we used to have in those days, and notice also we wore what we call braces, which now we call them suspenders, but that was the order of the day to wear braces. But that picture is probably, we were, as I say, I was about 7 or 8 and Alf was a bit older. This ship, the name of this ship is the Highland Patriot, or the Highland Patriot, however you like to pronounce it. And when I was very young, in fact in 1937, I had an uncle and he was a laundryman on this ship, and I was kind of enamoured of the sea, and I said I'd like to get on that ship, and he said, well, I'll see if I can get you a job on it. So he did. He got me a job I started off as a pantry boy, and I graduated to a bugler and bellboy. And I've got the book here that tells us where it goes. And what the ship did, it ran from London down to South America to Buenos Aires, and it was a meat carrier, carried frozen beef and mutton from Argentina, and just back and forth between London and there. Anyway, I did actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did 8 voyages on that ship, and from 1937, and finished up in 1930. Looks like 39. Yeah, 1939. So I had a couple of years almost on it. This is a photograph of of the ceremony in 1966 when we became citizens of the United States. We took our lessons in the old Tustin High School, and this picture here is of the ceremony on the steps of the old courthouse in Santa Ana, which is now not a courthouse, but the building's still there.
And here we are, Stanley, Betty, Jennifer behind, and Heather was a little toddler, about a year and a half old, and came with us because she was a citizen anyway. And Fenella came in because she was under 16, she didn't have to take special classes, and Paul had to take his own citizenship later on. But here we are, this is the big day, we got our certificate and we waved our flags, and of course we didn't tell anyone in England that we'd done it until quite some time later because we were kind of scared.
How would you outline your personal history?
In 25 words or less.
In 25 words or less, and looking... Okay, I was born,
You
of
wanna
course,
start?
in England, and I had one sister. I was born in the country, in Staffordshire, which is the county where all the nice china is made. And as a little girl, I had asthma quite badly when I was born. I was born with asthma, and it cleared up when I was 7. Didn't have it at all since, but it is in the family. So I was a little skinny girl, and I liked to be outdoors, walking around outside. I loved little animals. I liked sitting on the steps with a lap full of puppies.
How
School
old were
too
you?
soon. I was about 15. But I shouldn't have left then, but the war was on, and I was anxious to leave and get grown up. And the headmistress came to our house and told my mother that it was a sin for me to leave school because I was doing so well. I was anxious to leave.
So what did
But
you
after
do
that,
when
I
you
went
left?
I went to work in a hat shop.
Is that your
For a
first
little,
job?
5 shillings a week I earned. And with my first paycheck, I bought a big bunch of lilacs. But then every night, or about 3 times a week, I went to a little lady's house and learned shorthand and typing, Pitman's shorthand and typing, and got all my certificates in shorthand and typing and bookkeeping from this little lady. And then I did correspondence courses after that.
So when did you go to London?
When I went to London? I went to London when I was 17. I was working at, well, before that I worked at the biggest grocery, kind of gourmet grocery shop in that little town. It's called Cushing's, and it was rather a rather nice shop, and I did all the accounting for that shop at about 16 years old. I added up columns of figures, and I had to balance the books from every department at night and come out perfectly. Besides which, I had to serve the sweets and cut the ration coupons for the sweets. That was a busy, busy job. Never had time. On market day, we never had time to even have lunch. We never thought about complaining that we didn't have lunch done. We just worked right through. That was 6 days a week. You had a half day off on Thursday. Open all day Saturday. I met Dad in, I think, June 45 when I was just 17. And he went back to sea for a while, and we wrote to each other. I was very antsy and wanted to get on with, get out of a small town. So I arranged that I was going to go to London. I had already visited Dad's family once. The first time I'd ever been to London.
Did you stay with
Visited
them?
for a week. And came home, and I thought London was the place to be. I wanted to go and work there. So Dad had talked to his mom, and she said I could come and live with him and go and work from there. So I said, this is what I'm going to do. Because when I told my mother that I was going to do that, she was violently against it for some reason.
Why?
Oh, well, I don't know. But anyway, she cried and cried and cried. And I didn't realize that if I was going to do it, I had to do it quickly. So I got my little bag all packed, got my train ticket. I was going on the train. I took my bag down to this railway station the night before, and I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and crept out of the house, leaving a note on the kitchen table. And as Kathleen always laughs about now, a bar of Cadbury's chocolate as a sop to my mother because of what I was doing. I left the note and got on the train, and here I was going to London with a suitcase of my clothes and everything in front of me. I thought it was wonderful. We decided we would get married, and we went looking for a house, and we wanted to go and live in the country, and we went by train up to Wales and miles up a hill looking for funny little old houses.
Now, why did you want to live in the country if you wanted to get to the big city? Why was
Well,
did
I
you
guess-
had
I
enough
know.
of London at that point?
Not really, but Dad wanted to live in the country, and I suppose it was romantic to get married and live in the country. A bride, not knowing anything about housekeeping because my mother hadn't taught me very much about cooking and so on. I guess I hadn't been too interested. And I had to cook on an open fire, not even a kitchen range or anything, just a fire. And I remember the first time I made custard, which was a staple in England. If you had pie, you had to have custard with it, which was like a sauce, custard sauce. And I burnt the custard sauce beyond the fire, and I was so upset. And Dad was so sweet about it. He said, I kind of like burnt custard. And then we mostly walked, and we lived on, our money was running out, and we lived on Brussels sprouts, which we grew, and eggs from the chickens, which the people had left behind, some chickens, so we had eggs. And they'd left these 2 huge cats, which terrified me to death. They were great big wild cats who lived outside. And when I'd take that something to eat, they were so hungry and so wild that they'd jump up at me and grab the dish out of my hand and take it on the floor. And I was scared to death of it. Anyway, we decided that we'd better move from there because it wasn't working out, and we were pregnant, we had no money. So I had Jennifer in a private nursing home, which was the thing to do, I was told, and that was going to cost some money. So we put our house up for sale, and we were lucky to sell it to some people from London who came down and didn't know anything about the country, but just thought they'd wanted to live there. And as it worked out, we just got a little bit of money in time to pay the nursing home bills and get on the train and go back to Shropshire and stay for a little while until we decided. Jennifer was 3 weeks old when we got on the train. We had Jennifer and a dog, I think, was more trouble than the baby, a great big black dog with us, which we let run away sometime later. And then soon after that, we went back to London again and lived in London for.
Did you live close to Dad's folks then?
Yeah, we did, fairly close, yeah. We had all his family there. And then when Dad and his Fred split up their business, we started our own similar business. By that time, Paul had come along, we had 2 children. So, but we started up a business in plastics, and I did the traveling for him. Dad did the manufacturing, and I used to put when Fidela was old enough to sleep in the daytime, I would go out up to the city and knock on doors and travel. And I was very proud of myself because I got an order for inflatable pillows for the Olympic Games in Australia, and we did this big order. And one time I remember we'd sold this order to a company, and no way, of course, did we say that we were such a little company. I was Miss Mia representing Ace Manufacturing Company, and they didn't know that I was half of Ace Manufacturing Company. So one day, I suppose they needed to ask us something, and there was a knock on the door, and I opened the door, and here's the man that I'd been talking to as the buyer of this company. And here I was, a little housewife with a baby back here, just ready to yell. So Dad and I, when I went to tell Dad, his face went completely white. And we did this thing where, luckily, Fenella was sleeping in the pram, and I said, well, I'll see if Mr. Bates is in. And I opened the door where the factory was, and I called out to someone, pretending there was a lot of people in this work. And there was only Dad and one other lady who used to work the machine that welded things together. And we thought we pulled it off. I don't know whether we did or not, whether he really knew that we would like to go back and live in the country. And then we looked around and decided that wasn't a good time, and we thought we may as well emigrate. So we thought we'd go first to Australia or New Zealand. But then I read about Australia, and I read about all these snakes in Australia. And I would try to think that they wouldn't get me, but I wasn't convinced. And then I read a book about a woman who went to Australia, and she told about how the men called the women Sheilas, and they were not a very nice place for women to grow up, I didn't think. So I thought, no, not Australia. So we decided on Canada, to Victoria for a little holiday on the way, a couple of days, and then we got a ferry down to Seattle, and then we got the train from Seattle to San Francisco, and then another train down to Santa Barbara, which took like a day and a night. We were on the mail train, and we got out of the train at Santa Barbara on September the 4th, 1958, into a 104-degree temperature. It was unusually hot for Santa Barbara, and we didn't know a soul, had nowhere to go, and we had in our possession, in our bag, $2,000, and what clothes we had on. We stayed in Santa Barbara about 7 months, and Dad had we wanted to start our own business, which was kind of ridiculous really, because we didn't have enough money. And Dad was making bird baths and sundials out of concrete. I started a business, rented a shop, and started a business of a salon called Slender You Salon. We had little machines on your tummy to reduce you, and I rented it from a Spanish girl who was a hairdresser in the next shop, and I didn't do very much business because I couldn't afford to advertise very much, so I spent many long hours sitting in that shop waiting for the phone to ring or someone to come in, and then I would go next door and help wash hair for this girl in the hairdressers, and she befriended me, and she was nice. So things there got kind of desperate because our money was running out, and
Did you go to Solvang?
and I think we'd driven around Solvang. We had an old car. We bought an old car. Of course, that was a day when gas was like 24 cents a gallon, so you could go a long way driving. And we drove around, and we were enjoying it. We still never ever thought of going back anywhere, either to Canada or to England. We all came down to Tustin, and I remember him saying, "I've seen a nice place down here. It's called Tustin. It seems like a small town, quite. I think we'll enjoy it." So we came down, and
What was the population?
population of Tustin was about 2,600.
And what year was that?
March 59. That's when we came down. And we were very fortunate, as often happened to us. We managed to rent a house from a gentleman whose wife had died, and had been living in this house alone, and he was lonely, and he wanted to go and live with his son, and he wanted to leave the house fully furnished and just leave it. So he rented it to us for $100 a month, with all the furniture in it, even pots and pans and everything. So we had that house for about a year, I guess, and during that time we saved money, and I went to work for a civil engineer, and we saved every penny we had, and at the end of that year we had enough down payment to buy a house. With our house in Orange Park Acres, and it had an acre of land. On one side was a half acre of oranges, and the other side was a half an acre of avocados, and a big gully at the back, and it was a lovely place for the children. We had dogs, so at one time we had 5 dogs. It was at this house that Heather was born, and she was our little surprise.
Okay, do you want me to start?
Yeah. How would you outline your life in an overview of main points which have shaped your own personal
That's a
history?
pretty big question when you consider I've been around for 68 years.
Today it's 68, isn't it?
But,
it's your birthday. Yeah.
Okay, very first job I had, it was a strange job, but it was in London. We lived in London, and the job was what they called district messenger. And what
Was this on the bicycle?
No, it wasn't on a bike. What the boy had to do, they had to go, it was called, the full name was District Messenger and Theatre Tickets. And what the boys, there were boys, there were no girls from what I can remember. What the boys did, they had to take theatre tickets from the agents to people's homes. You know, they would order, they would want to go to a certain theatre, and so then the boys would go, from what I can remember, the boy would go to the ticket office and get the ticket, charge it to the company, and then take it round to the people who wanted to go. And but other things like walking dogs and stuff like that. But we used to have a little uniform. I remember it was a little pillbox hat. We had a satchel on it, satchel on our shoulder, and on it said District Messenger and Theatre Ticket Company, with a brass plate, and they gave you a pass for all the buses and all the underground tubes and everything else. You just went on the tube and showed your pass, so you could travel all over London, which I did. I had an uncle who worked for the Royal Mail Line, running out of London down to South America, among other. They had other routes, but anyway, this particular ship took immigrants from Portugal down to South America. We picked them up from Lisbon, and they would travel third class down to, but also that the ship did carry passengers too, first class passengers and second class passengers, and they were third class passengers. Anyway, I got a job on this ship as a pantry boy in the pantry, and it was like washing plates and stuff like that. London to Southampton, then we go to the Canary Islands, and then we go across to Pernambuco, which is north of the north coast of South America. Hilarious. Everybody wanted to get a ship going across to America.
Why?
Well, because that was good, you know, America, you know, goodness, what can be better than getting to America, especially when the war was going, you know, full blast. Anyway, so I volunteered, because it was voluntary. I volunteered for this ship, and she did go to Maryland, Baltimore, yeah. She went to Baltimore. She went to New York and Baltimore.
What was her name?
And that was a Fort Erie. And but then she went across to the Mediterranean. She went through Gibraltar, and she went to Catania in Sicily. And from then on, she went backwards from Catania to Alexandria, down to Port Said, down the Suez Canal, to Aden, to Durban, and did that whole thing back again. And she did that all I don't know how many trips, back and forth, and I was on it for over a year.
Wow.
And then I was on another vessel called the Arabian Prince for a little while. Then on another one called the Kelmscott. When they were really pasting London, and they'd come over every night, and my parents would go into the air raid shelter. And this particular time, they heard this bomb come down there in the shelter, and then it all quietened down, and an air raid warden came in and said the Bates house had been hit. So that was the first thing we heard. But it destroyed the house because I don't quite. The way it was told to me was that the bomb, it was an oil bomb, and whether the oil was supposed to ignite or not, I don't know. But the oil got over everything in the house. Because what it didn't knock down, the oil got into it. So my father, he worked in what they call the civil defence, and he was too old, I guess, to get into the army. But anyway, the civil defence, what they did in London, they were the ones that helped the firemen. They were like a general purpose people. They'd help the firemen put out the fires and rescue people. They did some paramedic work, first aid and stuff like that. And actually my dad was pretty good at first aid. He did quite a lot of it. But anyway, this particular night, they had that had a really nasty night, the bombs and so forth, and fire, and people getting hurt. And so they went to bed exhausted, and then they heard this little knocking against the wall in the night, but they were so tired they didn't bother to go and see what it was. But in the morning, when they got up and they went out, they found what it was, and what it was what Hitler was doing at that time. He was sending over. It was another version of a rocket. He would send the rocket over. When it got up to altitude over London, it would start to come down, and a parachute would come from it, and then it would come down with the parachute slowly, fairly slowly. And at the bottom of the bomb was like a big torpedo, I guess, and at the bottom of it was a detonator. So it was, once it hit the ground, up she went. And this particular thing, what was knocking against the wall, was one of these things, and the parachute had caught on the chimney, and so it didn't get down to the ground. It was like about 6 feet off the ground, but in the wind in the night, it was like going backwards and forwards and knocking against the wall. So that was kind of.
So that would have blown you all to bits.
I don't know.
Oh, that was kind of. I was a kid. We used to wear these little short shorts, and I must have been about 8 or something like that. But we used to wear these little shorts, and I remember sitting at my desk, and we had the old wooden desk, with a little groove up there and a pen and an ink pot with liquid ink in there, and you kept your books in there. But anyway, I remember I was sitting at my desk one day, and I looked down, and there was like a line across my legs, and this part was light and this part was dark. And I remember thinking to myself, God, what happened to my legs? My legs have gone dark, I must have some terrible disease. And I was getting awfully worried. I just sat there looking at my legs. Maybe I better tell the teacher. But then when I moved my legs, it was just a shadow from the desk. There was nothing wrong with the legs at all.
Well, why don't you show us your medals that you got from the war?
Oh, the medal from the war.
From the Merchant Marines.
Okay, I will show you the medals. And really,
How many medals did you get?
well, I'll read you what they Prince. I didn't apply for them, but it says, I enclose here with a supply of the ribbons and emblems for which you appear to be eligible. The 1939 to 1945 star, the Africa Star, clasped to the Africa Star, the Atlantic Star, clasped to the Atlantic Star, and the Italy Star. And what it really means was, for each of these places you've been, you got one of these stars. Oh, so the 1939 to 45 star. Going a little bit tarnished. I haven't punished them lately. Star. And the Atlantic Star. This one is the 1939 to 1945.
Now hold that one up.
Reminds me of these parades you see of an old soldier, and they've got all these medals on their chest. Star. It says dark blue, red and light blue in 3 equal vertical stripes. This ribbon is worn with the dark blue stripe furthest from the left shoulder. Gives you continuous certificate of discharge, and I think you can probably read it.
That's all the.
But just to give you the name of the ship, the Highland Patriot, Belfast, and London Victoria Docks. And your rating now, I was pantry boy. Went down to the River Plate, and then I got promoted one trip to bugler and bellboy. And what I didn't play a bugle, but what I had to do, they gave me a little like a little dulcimer thing, and I'd play it for the meals, you know, and I'd walk up and down the aisles and playing a ding 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 ding, and then that signaled that it was mealtime, you know. And the passengers would come out of there, come down there. They're playing this little gong, and I had to wear a little white jacket, you know.
Kind of an honorary position then.
I guess it was. In South America, I don't know why I bought it. I bought this lamp, a humble thing really, now I come to think of it. It was a lamp with an armadillo's skin, and like the armadillo was stretched, just his skin is what it was, and they'd stretched around, and made him into a lampshade. And but the lamp, I remember I took it home,
Who'd you give that
and my
to?
mother, she didn't like it, and anyway, wound up with one of my aunts, and I think they still have it. It's an armadillo lamp.
Didn't you bring back a monkey from somewhere?
Yeah, I did. I bought back
A live monkey?
Yeah, a little marmoset. I should never have done it.
Where was that from?
That was from South America. Bought this little marmoset bag, and
What happened to that?
well, I gave it to Fred, one of Fred's girlfriends. He had a girlfriend at the time, and she really wanted this little marmoset.
How big is
It
it?
was only a little tiny thing. It should have been in a zoo, really. Anyway, I gave her this marmoset, and
Did she name it?
I'm sure she did, but it didn't
Charles.
live. It died after about a couple of months.
Oh.
She cried, and I think after that she broke up with Fred.
Very serious.
I don't get it. By George, I don't get it.
Shining happy, people laughing.
things that can affect peoples and individuals is intolerance. People who refuse or are unable to see another person's or another nation's even point of view and get stuck in one way of looking at things.
For the future of those intolerant problems, do you think the world is going to?
Well, I think
Get
everything
better,
that
or?
goes around comes around. They say everything evolves every 25 years, so probably we'll go back to, maybe even now are going back to a more Victorian age where conventions are recognized a little more, and then we'll go through a rebellious age again. I feel that when we worry too much about what is happening, we're sometimes doing the wrong thing, because we can't prevent this natural evolution in time of different problems that surface at different times of our lives and in different countries. We've said, Dad and I, our education was rather limited in the formal sense, but I thinking about it, I can honestly say that I've never felt uneducated, except maybe in the classics or something like that, which I can still become self-educated in. But for several reasons, and I think the first one was the education that we did have in England in our day was, to its extent, very, very good. It was rigid, but it was very good. We had French and Latin and physics as quite young children in school. And although we don't have college degrees, I've never felt that I was any better, any less educated than anyone else I came in contact with. And I think another reason of that is, of course, reading, which is very important. And I would stress down the generations, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, read and read and read. And mothers, read to your children even before they are able to know that you're reading to them. And read everything. Don't put anything on the don't read list. And read most of all, read a dictionary, because one of the best things you can do is to get a good vocabulary. I've heard many supposedly educated people whose vocabulary is so limited that you really can't become too interested in what they're saying. If you can extend your vocabulary, you're doing a great deal for your education. So as far as that, it would be nice to have a piece of paper that said you're a college graduate, and I suppose in a way we could say that has held us back from doing some things, but not really, because I've always gone ahead and done what I wanted to do, and in some instances I've had to fake it, and it's always worked out okay. But to take oneself too seriously and not to take life too seriously, because I've always thought at the worst moments, I've always thought, wouldn't it look funny to see us if we could just rise above and be looking down on our people with our little problems, and look down here and see these little people worrying about things. And and one thing I can say too, and it's a little experience I had when we were having a difficult time. It was when financially things were pretty bad, and we had a house we couldn't sell, and things were pretty bad. And I went upstairs and sat down on the bed, and I was thinking to myself, what shall we do? What is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? And this little voice came to me, and it said, do nothing. And it was the voice of my grandmother, my mother's mother, who died when I was about 7. And I wasn't thinking of her or anything. And it just said, do nothing. And that was exactly the right thing to do at that time. Just to sit and wait, and things would work out. And they did. So that often is a piece of advice that I try to think of sometimes. Another thing I'd like to pass on, well, I'll give you one thing from Grandma Mia, which has been a very good piece of advice for me. I told all you girls, always have a little money in your purse, tucked away for emergencies. You can never feel poor if you have a little $20 bill even tucked away in your purse. And she always said that, always keep a little bit of money in your purse tucked
But what
away.
about when you spend it?
Well, then you have to make sure you get it back again. That's your first priority again, to get that little note back in your purse again. And another thing, never allow yourself to feel poor. There are times when you are poor financially, maybe spiritually or any other way, but the people who are really poor are the people who maybe have more than other people. but they somehow have the outlook on life of feeling poor and feeling deprived. If you have a time when you're feeling really poor, maybe you don't have money, you don't have possessions, you don't have what other people have, do something about it. One thing you can do is to spend just a little bit of money. Go out and buy a rose and put it on your table. Then you won't feel poor. You've got something. That when I'm gone, I hope that maybe sometime, somewhere on down the line, we'll pick up this book. I call it Things I Believe In. And maybe somebody might look at some of these and think, gosh, I would agree with that too. One from Leah Roston, I like. The purpose of life is not to be, quote, happy. The purpose of life is to matter, to be productive, to have it make some difference that you live at all. Happiness in the ancient noble verse means self-fulfillment and is given to those who use to the fullest whatever talents God or luck or fate bestow on them. On dying, this sounds macabre, but this is what I got it. To die with love around you, pride behind you, and hope in front of you. I think this is the concept of the hospice situation. And I think I got one more here. An old woman, I shall wear purple, with a red hat which doesn't go and doesn't suit me. And I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves, and satin sandals, and say we've no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I'm tired, and gobble up samples in shops, and press alarm bells, and run my stick along the public railings, and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain, and pick the flowers in other people's gardens, learn to spit. But maybe I ought to practice a little now, so people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I'm old and start to wear purple. That's from a poem, The Warning, by Jenny Joseph, an English poet.
Would you call yourself a feminist?
Yes. In many ways, yes.
What principles of feminism do you
Well,
hold dear to
equality.
you?
Equality. I don't subscribe to the violent, foolish feminism that's
Militant.
just done for effect. But at the same time, I do feel that there is a room for those very far to one side people, because it's by being some people being far on one side, some people being far on the other, that we get the happy medium that comes across eventually. And some are reviled on each side. The ones who really take it to each extreme, I think, are to be admired in a way, because they make it easy for us to accept and come to a happy medium. A gift of being able to make good friends that men sometimes don't have, or the men didn't have in my day. I think now it's a little different. Maybe younger men have friendships, but I think women are great. And we went to India for the second time, and that was quite an adventure. We didn't enjoy all of it at the time, but we enjoy it now looking back on it, and it was a lot of fun. This is in where was this? Out of Mysore, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Heather, myself, and this is Sarah Dixon, who was a pretty good sport on the whole, and we're standing under some waterfall that was giving us a little shower because it was so hot. The children are thinking we are crazy to think about moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we are, but I want to keep open to change. I don't want to become closed in viewpoints or in actions. So maybe change is in the wind as far as moving to another house. We've loved where we live up here. You've seen some of the house and the surroundings. It's been beautiful. We've enjoyed our cabin home here for 20 years, 22 years, 9 years living here, and other years just coming up. But nothing stays the same, and we have to accept this and be happy in situations that change. And if it's change brought about by our own actions, then that's good too. Accept it, enjoy it.
So you're looking forward to
Life
some
is-
change?
Life is too short not to change. Yes, I always look forward to. I look forward to everything that happens.
have a request for you from your grandsons, Jacob, Shane, and Dylan DeJulio. They would like you to sing Four Beans.
Oh, 4 beans. Oh, no, not 4 beans. 4 beans in a hole. 1 for the rooks, 1 for the crows, 1 to rock and 1 to grow.
Okay, very good. Ed, what did you learn by being a father? What did you learn from
Well, I guess
years as a dad?
lots of it teaches you patience and understanding, of course. And you have a sense of achievement and a sense of failure too, because your kids are never quite as you hope them to be. Because
Careful.
nobody ever is. And but by and large, that's about it. But I think probably most of all, it teaches you patience. It taught me anyway.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, maybe one other thing. Well, there were quite a few other things. But I suppose one pretty important factor is that no two people are the same. And you can't expect them to be the same as you or your mother or brother or whatever. Everybody's different. They all have their own road to hoe. Well, really and truly, to give advice to young people is probably a waste of time, because I don't think I listen to anybody's advice. I don't think my children or grandchildren listen to it either, but for what it's worth, I'd say you've got to learn to be patient, and just because you get knocked down, don't take it too seriously. Let's get up again and start all over. Photos of when we were in India, which we really enjoyed. I've got this one that we took the first time we were there, the Taj Mahal, and Heather really got it blown up for me, which turned out to be a really nice picture.
What did you think of the Taj Mahal?
Oh, it was beautiful. It was another one blown up too. That's Ronnie and me. We were on a boat going in South India and the Deccan Plateau.
Okay, hold it up.
And going up towards
Cochin.
Cochin, yeah, that's on the waterway there. And this is Ronnie and myself in pensive mood. I always think it was hot there too, but really beautiful. All palm trees.
Listening to in the background here.
Oh, there's the pipes and drums. I think it's a Black Watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You used to play the bagpipe, or you began
Well, I
to?
was learning to play the bagpipes when I was in England, and I've still got my chanter, which is here, my practice chanter, which I haven't picked up for I don't know how long. So I never did learn fully how to play the pipe, but as you can see, I'm really pretty rusty. But I've got my old tutor book from when I was back in England. We were being taught by a real perfectionist of a bagpipe master, and when I told him that we were going to be leaving for Canada, he said, "Oh, that buggered it. You'll never learn to play the pipes there."
What did he mean?
I said, "Well, why not?" "Well," he said, "all you hear is skirling." Skirling, he said. That's all you hear. And I think what he meant was they drag their notes out. They don't cut them off clean and crisp.
Huh.
That's what I did. But anyway, I still got the tutor. I open it now and again. Look at it.
You think you
What
ever?
a carrot.
Think you'll ever do
I
it?
just played it. I just played a few notes.
Play a few more notes. Play the
Yeah.
scale. Can you just try the scale?
I mean, you can play that now. No, I can't play that now. I've forgotten how that goes. Can't even get the holes covered. My fingers are too thick now. Something like this.
Yay.
But it takes interest. But I like the pipes, always have.
Okay.
Of my grandfather, William Henry John Bates, and he married Emily Poole, and this was December 1883 was the date of it, and
December 1883?
right, that's when they were married, and there again they were bachelor and spinster, described as, and then the age, I can't quite see what his age was. It says it's written, but under her age is full.
Full?
Yeah, if you add on full, so she was at full age.
What do you think that means? Like in our 20s
I
or
would imagine that.
30s?
I would imagine, yeah, I would imagine
Age of consent.
over 21, yeah. It says his rank was trimming manufacturer, and she has a dash on.
What's a trimming manufacturer?
Well, in those days, in the old Victorian days, I think they were great on trimmings. I think they put trimmings on everything. They'd have trimmings around the hats, and trimmings even around the mantelpieces. You would have trimmings, like a drape over the mantelpiece, and then trimmings all over it. I think trimmings were a really big thing, and of course on drapes.
Oh, like
drapes.
Victorian.
Yeah, the heavy Victorian
Fripperies.
with trimmings. Yeah. As your life progresses, you see different things that you want to do, and I say, travelling is one of the things that we have.
Where would you like to go?
Well, I'd like to go to New Zealand and see a little bit of that, and I'd like to go back to England. We're hoping to go back in 1993. To go back for another visit. And we're thinking seriously of buying a little recreational vehicle that we can drive around in. Not a big monster of a thing. Everything in it with settees and sofas and things like that in it, but a fairly reasonable little thing that we can run around in. Don't take too much of the country's resources by doing it.
Well, when you were born, there were no automobiles. Telephones, televisions, refrigerators, nuclear bombs, space satellites, computers, and so on and so on. How do you see those having changed civilization?
Well, of course there were automobiles, because I don't go back that far. But it seemed to me that everything is progress, and there's no way you can keep progress from going forward, and everything, every new product or every new thing that comes along is a step forward, but it also has a downside. Now some things have more downside than upsides. So things are better in many respects. Things are worse in lots of respects too, but I think there are more things that are better than there are worse.
What do you think are the good major developments that have happened in your lifetime that you've seen occur? The good things that have happened with civilization?
Well, I think people have realized people are not so isolated as they were. People realize more. There's another part of the world apart from their own backyard, and the world has grown a bigger place, a smaller place rather, because of that. And I think people understand now other people's problems. For example, if something terrible happens, like an earthquake, or like recently in the terrible typhoons in excuse me, in Bangladesh, people immediately come to the rescue, or try to come to the rescue, and in days gone by, nobody would have, well, not nobody, but the people that could help wouldn't have known about it, or been so obviously informed. So,
What do you see as the main problems facing the world today?
I think one of the problems is people have turned, and I don't know if it's only television, probably not, but people seem to have got a lot more, from my perspective, a lot more angry with each other, or angry with government, or angry with something, and they're not quite so laid back as they used to be when I was growing up. It seems that people seem to be more acquisitive. They're trying to get more by doing less, and this to me is a disturbing development thing. Or without working for it, or without effort, to them it's a plus. Many, I think there were more people. There were always those people, but I think there's more than there used to be. I think that it's going to improve because people realise now that they've got to live together.
Yeah.
There's no other way. All these huge wars that have been fought in the past, people realise that we just can't keep fighting huge wars every 20 or 50 or whatever years, and that's got to stop. There's no way we can keep doing that. So I think I'm positive about the outlook. I think things will get better, gradually better.
And Dad, what have you got to show us here?
Well, there's a little pole stand I made some time ago, a little oak and a little stained glass at the back of it. In here.
Okay.
Comes in handy to put walking sticks and dog leashes and so forth on, hats.
Okay, why don't you stand closer to it?
I should stand and put a hat on it. Should have hats. There it is.
Okay. Shall we go into the kitchen?
Okay. And in the kitchen, some little odds and ends. I did the cabinets.
You did these cabinets?
Put in the kitchen and maybe I should. The cabinets and this little centerpiece was. Mother likes it very much. It rolls
Okay.
around.
And what do
And
we
then,
see?
this-
Favorite piece of furniture.
And then, yes, I made that clock.
When did you make this clock?
Oh, I've had that a long time, probably about 10 or 15 years. And this little oak table I refinished.
Oh, that came from Larry, who loaned us the camera.
Larry and Martha gave us, the people that loaned us the camera, Larry and Martha.
It was, Dad refinished it.
Yeah, refinished it.
Okay.
That's nice, and this little mum likes this that I made for a little
Yes.
spice rack,
A little spice cabinet.
spice cabinet.
Oh, that fits in, doesn't it?
Just fits right in, yeah.
Well, open. Let's see what spices you have in there. Any curry?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
So
curry.
definitely. Masala,
Just
garam
about,
masala. Beautiful curries.
about everything you need.
These are a craft from England that Liz makes, my niece, nephew's wife Liz, called corn dollies. She makes them, Dad's got another one in his hand. She makes them from corn that she soaks in water and then binds around. It's an old traditional craft that she's good at, as well as what is the work she does? Lace work.
Lace work. This one is evidently Essex, and different counties have different things that they make during the during the wheat
She
time.
sent us quite a lot of them
Yeah.
I've given away. It's a Welsh lamb, and this was, we bought in Cornwall at the first year we were married, from Cornish Stone. Some things from England, a little Welsh lady.
Some things from India.
All our pictures, some old pictures that we had.
This
Our
little-
books, which all need sorting out.
A little collection of
Oh, yeah.
a little collection of men from India, different characters, and then some soldiers.
And remember, Heather, you made this in shop class
Heather
when you were
made this
about
in shop.
11.
Yes.
And it was just a tray, but we had put glass in front of it and converted it to
Made
a
it
little
into quite
a little
nice,
holder.
quite a nice little memento.
Now, in that glass, Dad, I can see reflected some other colored glass.
Oh, right behind you.
Oh, right
This
behind
Dad's
us
window
is-
that he did not too long ago.
I'm gonna close that door so we can get a full shot of it.
Yes. This window I put in because you can see it from the other end of the house, and
Also from outside.
also from
It's,
outside
when
where the
are
light's on here. Yeah, you can see it from down the road. But we had 3 little ugly little glass windows. They were about this tall across, and I thought it would be a good place for a little bit of colour to come into the house.
It's pretty.
So yeah, so we made that. And then over here is a grandfather clock that keeps very good time, and I made it from a kit. But I've had it, oh goodness, about what, 15, 20 years I think.
18 years.
18 or 20 years, and
It's great time. Well, you've had one new movement, don't you?
no, it's the same movement, but I had it what's it? And
Removed.
This is my little book, and this is my little tribute to my husband, I'm going to say. And it's a quote from Dickens, what Peggotty says in David Copperfield. And I've always thought this applied to Dad.
oh yeah, yeah.
This is a tribute to my husband. Oh, what an agreeable man he is. And if I could give an advice to women going down the line, women, marry a man who is agreeable.
Most agreeable.
Yes, most agreeable. Most agreeable is better than great, but agreeable. Most
Agreeable is a very, very nice trait in a person, to be agreeable.
Someone who is nice to you and is not hyper.
Yeah, the opposite side of the coin. The opposite side of the coin would be. The
How about
opposite
me?
side
How
of the
about you
coin would
saying
be
something nice about
kind
me?
of prickly.
Yes,
Some-
not prickly.
Some
that's
people
right.
are prickly and ready to take
Easily
offence
offended,
at the
yeah.
slightest provocation.
We've not been easily
They
offended.
have a high horse that you're constantly jumping up on. And those people are hard to live with. I think that's why we've probably got on so
Dad
well.
knocks me off mine sometimes if I get to be too much like Grandma Mia. He'll say a little phrase and I'll hop down off it. Right?
Exactly right, yes. I have to keep you in check.
And that's us. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for all your
We love you all.
effort.
Have a happy life, as we have had. That's all we wish for everyone.
I've
Who
written
come
down
after us, we wish you health and happiness and the wealth you must get for yourselves.